Donovan Brown is retiring.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Before we start, I want to put out a personal message. For those of you who have followed my work and content for some time, you know that I started ClearMeasure 10 years ago. We're a software architecture company, and that's the type of consulting we do to help in-house teams be great, to jumpstart them along their way. So all of our work is programming in all of its various forms, and we've done a tremendous amount of DevOps and cloud automation work as well. And we're the North American consulting partner for Octopus Deploy. Now, I haven't done this very often, but I'm putting out a call for anyone who'd like to work with me. We've been running on a backlog of projects for quite a while now, and we need to grow. We need some more .NET software engineers, DevOps engineers who have Octopus Deploy experience and Microsoft Cloud experience. And we're also in need of a few more experienced software architects. And if you followed me for any length of time, you probably understand how I think about software. And if you like the way I think about it, then you'll absolutely love working with me at ClearMeasure. We need to hire some people pretty immediately. So if this has piqued your attention, please go ahead and apply online on the website. And if you have any questions, just send me an email at Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at clear-measure.com. And thank you for indulging me with the interruption. And here's our regularly scheduled episode. Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. This podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results through its ClearMeasure Way methodology for effective software teams. Quick announcement, my architect forums are going strong. Signups for the next session are up. And if you lead a software team and are looking to collaborate with your peer architect leaders, go ahead and sign up at the link in the show notes. And for those who are looking for the Programming with Palermo video podcast, just search for it in any of the directories and you'll be able to find it. The guest today on the show is none other than Donovan Brown. He's been with us many times before on the podcast. Actually, he was episode number 2 back in 2008 on the Azure DevOps podcast, but he's a partner program manager in the Azure CTO Incubations team at Microsoft. The Incubations team focuses on forward-looking development and innovation to facilitate the development of new projects and ideas. And before joining Microsoft, Donovan spent 7 years as a process consultant and a certified Scrum Master. He's traveled the globe helping companies develop solutions using agile practices in many industries. He's an avid programmer, often finding ways to integrate software into his other hobbies and activities. Donovan, welcome back to the show. I think one last time. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, and I'm glad you reached out. I was really excited to have this opportunity to kind of like say goodbye and thank you too for all the support over the years. I can't believe it was 2008. Like that was, man, really 2008?
2018. Did I misspeak?
Okay, 2018. Was that 2008? I'm like, really? Like, holy crap, that was a long, even before I joined Microsoft. So 2018, that sounds more.
Yeah, it was 2018, episode number 2. And
gotcha, okay.
I think that year was the year it went from Visual Studio Team Services to Azure DevOps.
Oh, maybe I blocked that. I blocked that out. That name is still just been like, come on, like we couldn't have done better than that. And I remember internally we had this contest, right? And they were asking for names, and I submitted like 3 different names, and a lot of our friends did. And then when they revealed Azure DevOps, we all looked at each other and like, why did we go through that exercise? Because like no one submitted that. Like no one submitted that name.
Well, I remember there was a meeting of one of the MVP summits, and it just the question was, okay, should the brand fall under Visual Studio? Should it fall under Windows? Should it fall under Azure? Should it just be even those big ideas?
Yeah. I think falling under Azure made sense. Visual Studio, an amazing family of products, but they have this connotation. Well, they did. when we named it, right? Like Visual Studio Code hadn't really taken off yet. It was
Mhm.
still about Visual Studio, which people just associated 100% with .NET developers and Windows, right? So it would have kind of stifled the growth, and people would have just assumed it didn't work for them when it works for everybody, which
Yeah.
is this drum I had to beat for years. Is like, yeah, I don't care what language you program in, I can help you push it to wherever you want to push it.
Right.
So I think putting it under Azure kind of freed us from people assuming it only worked for one language. But believe it or not, it was still a hard message to get people to believe that I could do Java, I could do Linux, I could do all these other things with Azure DevOps. But still an enormous fan of that product. And I was so proud at Ignite, I got to announce that we added GitHub Advanced Security to Azure DevOps, right? We're
Mhm.
still investing in this product, which arguably made me who I am, right? I mean, without release management in Azure DevOps, I don't know that I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so you are retiring. What does that even mean? What's going on here?
Yeah, it was just everyone remembers Abel Wang, right? And when
Yeah,
Abel
yeah.
got sick, it kind of changed my perspective on everything. I mean everything: life, work, money, finances, everything. He recovered, but by that time he recovered the first time before he passed away, like he and I had changed the way that we invested.
Mhm.
Right? We were really thinking about, I want to be able to have my money make money.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to work for the rest of my life. I want to be able to go enjoy my life before something happens that prevents me from doing that.
Mhm.
Obviously, Abel passed away from cancer, and that just hit me again like a ton of bricks. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope. Like, why am I doing this? I just kind of lost some of that excitement because my best friend's gone,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to work myself to death, literally. So what I had done is, because I'd been changing the way that I'd been investing, I realized that I had reached this level of investing where it's like, holy crap, I don't know that I actually have to work anymore, right? Because I'm looking at what I'm generating annually from my investments, and I'm like, I don't make that much money working. Like, why am I killing myself working when, like, holy crap, this is cool? And my wife and I basically had to define success, right? And that's something that I challenge everyone to do. Because when I was first asked, Donovan, what does success look like? I had no idea, right? I'm like, oh, I
Mhm.
just get the next promotion. I just keep on working until I get the next promotion. Like, that's what success is, keep
Yeah.
getting promoted. But that wasn't the answer. So I asked my wife, I'm like, babe, what does success look like? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what does success look like? Like, how big does the house have to be? How many cars do we need? How much money do we need? She's like, I don't know. I was like, yeah, me either. Like, so why am I doing this? Like, what, like, when's the end? When do I get to say we're finished? She's
Yeah.
like, oh my God. So it took us probably 6 months of like heart to heart conversations about, what do we want our life to look like? And if it looked like that for the rest of our lives, would we be happy?
Mhm.
And we realized that it had a lot to do around travel, spending a lot of time with each other. But because travel was such a key part of our definition of success, and COVID was rampant, like I couldn't retire. Even though
Yeah.
financially I could retire, I couldn't go live the life that we wanted to go live because we couldn't travel. So we thought, might as well keep making the money, right? Like, you love your
Right.
job, you're really good at it, you're well compensated. Like, why are we going to retire and not go live the life we want to live?
Mhm.
But now all of a sudden we're flying more. We went to Ignite live.
Yep.
I was like, hold on. Like, this is starting to, I think we can go live that life that we want to go live. My wife and I just did a 3-week road trip. We're on our way back from Las Vegas. We drove from Houston to Las Vegas to go race our car, and we're on our way back now. Like, we're able to go live that life we want to live. And I thought, okay, I think now's the time then. I also have really bad knees from football when I was younger.
Oh man.
I'm thinking to myself, I just turned 50. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to hike up so I can do zip lines. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to go take those hikes. We just hiked, what is it, Carlsbad, the caverns at
Oh,
Carlsbad. I
nice.
don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever done that. It's freaking amazing,
When
right?
I
But
was 8.
it's still amazing. Like, to this day, like, it was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And I'm thinking, as I'm going those switchbacks, I'm like, wow, I'm not sure how much longer I'll be able to do like a
Mhm.
3-mile hike, right?
Yeah.
Thank goodness I'm doing this now. So that's really what changed why am I retiring? Because my philosophy is very simple. I can always retire early and then go back to work.
Mhm.
But if I were to retire late, I would
Yeah.
regret that for the rest of my life, right? So that's what happened right now. Was I took a just stock of my life, looked at my finances, looked at the quality of life that I have currently, and I want to be able to enjoy it. And I said, now's the time. I've just turned 50. Um, I'm financially stable. There's a lot of stuff on the list of things I want to go do. Babe, I think this is the time. And my wife's been 100% supportive the entire time. So I went and spoke to Mark, spoke to Scott Guthrie, Mark Razinovich, my manager. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm thinking. And everyone's like, okay, let's just support you in any way that we can. And Microsoft's been incredible. And they're like, all right, we appreciate everything that you've done. If you ever want to come home, let us know, and let's get this going for you. And that's what happened. So we chose the 28th of April because it just gave us a long time for me to be able to wrap things up, be able to help my team transition, make sure I didn't have anything on my plate that I needed to get off my plate, and just to be there so people can just pick my brain and just grab as much information from me as they can before I go off and just race cars and travel the world. That's what I want to do right now.
Nice. Now, some people are probably asking, man, investing, what does that mean? But okay, take a step earlier. You spent less than you made. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have $1 to work with, right?
Right.
And I think that a lot of people struggle with that because it's, I don't know, it's fun to buy stuff.
Oh man!
I know we're talking a little bit of tech here, but we're talking a lot about life. So
we'll come back to tech.
Yeah,
I've written
exactly.
some tech. I've written some tech that helps me make money, which we can talk about. And that's probably what I'm going to be doing in retirement. It's like, what does retirement look like? Retirement looks like me taking all the things that I've learned and codifying it in some way to where I can help others do exactly what I've done. Because the number one question I got asked on LinkedIn on my post, like everyone would congratulate me and then hit me with a DM. How did you do that?
Exactly.
What do you need? What books are there? And I'm thinking, all right, I need to figure out a way to share this information that I've been able to figure out, right? Yeah. And I read a ton. If I'm not asleep, I'm reading something on finance and investing. It's fascinated me lately because it's given me the life that I live right now. Yeah. But to answer your point, when I was younger, very bad with finances. I was in a crippling credit card debt at one point. Almost lost my house. So I've been on hit rock bottom when it comes to finances and poorly managing my money, right? I was able to have a job and accelerated my career to where I was able to make more money than I needed. And I knew what the bad side was. Living paycheck to paycheck is a bad idea, regardless of how big the paycheck is. Yeah. And people don't understand that. You could be a NFL football star. If you spend every dime of every check you get, as soon as you get hurt, you're in bad shape now, right? Because you don't have money to go back in there. Right. And protect you from those horrible situations. So I started learning that, and I realized that I needed to start making sure that I pay myself first. And that's a philosophy that if you go search for that, there's people that say you need to take a portion of your money and you need to pay yourself with it before you pay anything else. And the paying yourself means putting it in some type of an investment. I don't care how simple of an investment it is. And a savings account is not an investment, just FYI, right? Like they're investing your money and giving you some little residual off of it. I mean, even a CD is a better investment than putting money into your savings account, right? So figure out what investing is, get comfortable with it, understand it. And I tell everybody, the most important thing that if there's anything in your life that you need to understand how it works, it's your money, right? Because it controls everything that you do, where you live, how you eat, how you travel. Everything is revolving around this thing called money. And very few of us understand how it actually works and how to make it work for you. And that's, again, Abel and I just became fascinated with that. And we were able to go off and produce enough income. And what's interesting is that when it starts to happen, it becomes addictive. And the way it happened for me is that I work for Microsoft. Microsoft rewards us with stock. So every couple of months, I get more stock, and Microsoft pays a dividend, but it only pays it every 3 months. And it's not a very big dividend. But when you collect enough of Microsoft, all of a sudden those numbers start to be significant. It's like, oh, this isn't like a couple of dollars every 3 months. This is like, wow, that's like $1,000 in there. Yeah. And I get this every 3 months. If that was $10,000, we're talking serious money. Right. And then I basically rewired my brain in not thinking, I need to understand how this works, because for a while there, I didn't understand where the money was coming from. I was just looking there, there's a little more extra money. I'm like, where is that money coming from? I didn't even understand. It's kind of cool. And I didn't understand the stock market. So I log in every once in a while, but I wasn't watching it like I do now. I watch it every day, every minute of the day. Yeah. But once I realized that, wow, your stock makes you money. It's not just about appreciating in value. It's actually giving you money. And if that were enough money, I could change the way that I live my life. As you start to get promoted through Microsoft, you start to get more benefits. And one of them is a financial advisor that gets assigned to you from Fidelity. And I went and I spoke to him, and he said, Mr. Brown, what are your goals? I was like, I want 50,000 shares of Microsoft stock. He's like, why do you want 50,000 shares? I'm like, because it pays 50 cents a share. And if I had 50,000 shares and they paid me every 3 months, I'd be like $100,000 a year. And he was like, great. So if you want income, you need to sell your Microsoft stock. I'm like, nope. I'm never selling my Microsoft stock. I had this emotional attachment to my Microsoft stock. I'm like, I'm never selling it. You're a crazy person. Why am I even listening to you? He says, no, Mr. Brown, you really need to start looking at other investments that actually generate income if that is what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was already trying to figure out, how do I make my money make money so I don't have to make the money myself? And again, Abel getting sick is where I went back. I heard what he said, but I didn't listen to him, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I heard the words that the financial advisor said, but I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in the mental headspace to hear what he said or just to listen to the words that he said. So when Abel's things happened, all of a sudden it reset everything. I went back and listened to what he had said, started learning about investments that pay income, sold a large portion of my Microsoft position, bought other stuff, and was just blown away by how much income I was now generating on a monthly basis. That, again, just changed the way that I invested everything. So when you do that, though, what's interesting is buying that new car or buying something that will buy you that car. Like, again, the wires in your brain just completely rewired. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to buy that car. I'm going to take the money that I would have paid for that car, and I'm going to go buy an investment that generates more money than that car, and then I'm going to buy that car with that money instead. So I'm just like sitting back watching my money buy me the thing that I want versus me spending my money to buy that thing. And then the money that I make as an employee is just bonus. And all I do is I just keep reinvesting it. And I'm trying to build this, they call it a snowball, to where as long as you generate more money in a month than you need to survive, that excess you go back and reinvest in other assets, which means next month you generate even more money than you did last month, which is more than you need to survive. And this amazing phenomenon happens where you just start snowballing, and you look around and you're like, why do I go to work? And that's what happened to me.
So a key thing that I think that I heard you say, I just want to highlight and confirm. You talk about the term investment, savings account, not an investment, but that if something is generating cash. So some people talk about their home is a big investment, but it doesn't generate cash.
Exactly.
So,
your home is a liability, right? Your home, unless you're Airbnb your home, unless you're renting out that home is a liability, not an asset. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's the simplest analogy you can think of. Now, you can probably turn anything that you own into an asset. For example, I have a motorcycle. I very rarely ride my motorcycle. There's this thing called rideshare, where I can basically rent my motorcycle out to people who would ride it more often than I would. It's hot in Houston. I'm not getting all geared up to get on my motorcycle and sweat myself to death, right? So only when it's beautiful outside do I ride my motorcycle, but that leaves it in my garage 99% of the time. So I can turn my motorcycle into an asset by actually having it generate income for me versus just sitting in my garage costing me money for insurance and gas and maintenance and things like that. So just think about a very simple analogy. If it's putting money in your pocket, it's an asset.
Yeah.
So some houses are assets, some houses are liabilities, because if they're taking money out of your pocket and only taking money out of your pocket like my home does, then it's definitely a liability.
Well, I have a motorcycle too. And because of my kids in school and football game, I don't ride it as much. Oh, I got to haul a kid around.
Yep.
Does that actually work? I never heard of that. You're renting out
I just
your motorcycle.
found out about it on this trip. So I'm like dying to get home and do all the research because my bike is just sitting in the garage. I just put a new battery in it, and I haven't even ridden it yet with the new battery, right? Because last time I went to go try to ride it, the battery was completely toasted. And I'm like, oh crap, it's been like a year and a half. And I had it on a trickle charger, but clearly it wasn't working.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm thinking, wow, turn my motorcycle into an asset. It's just, again, it changes the way I think about everything. Like, how can I turn this thing into something that makes money for me? And oddly enough, your money is the number one employee that you have, because it works 24 hours a day for you if you know how to put it to work.
Yeah. So it sounds like one of your retirement projects is going to be teaching. You said you want to teach other people how to do it, some of this. Right.
And I think I want to not only teach, but also enable those who don't have the time to learn. For example, I'm a huge income investor. It's called dividend investing or income investing, right? And there's a dividend capture strategy, which is not very successful, but if you time it just right, you can be successful, where you buy the stock right before it pays the dividend, then you're able to sell it shortly after, but then you get the dividend even though you don't own the shares anymore.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to be able to do was have programs help me know when to capture a particular dividend. Or, for example, shares that I own that I want to sell, I don't want to sell them too soon. Or if I have some extra cash sitting in my bank account that I want to go invest, I want to know when the right time to invest. So what I did is I wrote a Python application, and it's an Azure function that's sitting in Azure. And anytime I have extra cash, I can run a command in PowerShell that calls my function. It says, Donovan, buy all these things by this date. Like, okay, cool. And I just go in and I just go buy these things that I need to go buy. And then the next month it generates income for me. So I think what I'm going to be doing is figuring out how can I take Azure and the languages that I learned, probably Python, because it's so good at collecting large volumes of data, right? So if you look at pandas and NumPy and things like that, and you put that stuff together, like you're scraping data from all these different financial sources and able to make sense of it. And then hosting it in Azure to me obviously was a no-brainer. And all of a sudden I have this way to allow that eases what I would have to do. Otherwise that would take me forever to go through and download all the data and visit all the websites and figure out what the ex-dividend date is and when's the final date that I can buy it because of holidays and the weekends. And it took forever. But now I just run a command and it's like, here you go, Donovan. Like, here's all the things you should buy. This is how much they pay in dividends. This is when you should buy it by. And I was like, oh, awesome. And then I go and buy the things I want to go buy. So what I want to do is make applications like that available to whoever wants to use them, because this information I'm sharing with you, I share with a lot of friends of mine, right? And I had a conversation yesterday, and one of my buddies was like, man, the layoffs are really scary. But dude, thank you so much, because if I wasn't financially set up the way that I am, thanks to you, I'd be nervous right now. And it was like comments like that, or just like they hit you in your chest, right? Because you realize like you've changed this person's entire life, right? You've made their entire life better to where they're not sitting on pins and needles through a layoff because they're financially set up, because they understand how this stuff works because of information that you shared with them. So yeah, teaching probably, because I will talk your ear off about this, just like I did with DevOps, right? And some people were telling me like, Donovan, man, when you start talking about finance, you light up like you used to. Like, yeah, it's fascinating, right? And it changes your life. Just like I felt DevOps changed the life of every developer, like finance changes the life of everyone on earth if you understand how that stuff works. So you're probably right. I don't know what shape it'll take, if it'll be YouTube or blog post or a book or software or all of the above, right? But I do have there's no way I put down the finance books, because one of the things that it's very nerve-wracking when you retire, because I've had all of my finances reviewed multiple times by multiple people, and everyone believes I'm set up correctly, but there's always that that little part that's a little scary inside. Like, man, is this going to last? Is this going to work the way that I think it to? Is the market going to continue to work the way I need it to so that I can continue to live this life? It makes you nervous. And the only way that I can calm my nerves is to read more and more and more, and understand more about how the industry works and how the finances work. And it's like, okay, yeah, I think I agree with everyone that my stuff is going to work, because I understand more now than they used to. And what's funny is I'm using the exact same like passion and determination for finance that I use for DevOps. Because for DevOps, it's about, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to understand every type of software development. I wanted to understand how our tools work together, how I could integrate with everything. And now I've just turned my attention from DevOps to finance. Like how can I use software? Just like you said in my bio, I always figure out ways to take software and put it into my life because it makes my life easier. So I am so excited, right, to be able to just go and focus on how do I turn software or allow software to enable me to go live the life that I want to live? And then how do I then go allow others to leverage exactly what I've been able to do the same thing for themselves? It's very exciting.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery. ClearMeasure is also happy to be a sponsor of the video podcast, Programming with Palermo. Watch, learn, and program alongside Chief Architect Jeffrey Palermo. Videos are added weekly and available on syndicated locations supporting video podcast or by visiting palermo.network. Tune in today.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. And some young people I've advised, the question you mentioned, hey, what if it doesn't work out? Microsoft they said they'll welcome you back, but you are such a high level of expert, like a super high expert in software. You're a software architect, regardless of leader, just advice. Even if you just declared yourself a consultant, enough people would say, hey, I need some help here. Boom. Because you got those skills. And so retirement's not scary because you have an asset no one can take away from you, and it's all the knowledge and experience that you've gained over your career. I think some young programmers are probably listening, and they're thinking, okay, how do I learn this syntax? How does this .NET thing work again? And they're so far like, how do I learn what Donovan learned? But you just keep on plugging away, and as long as you become an expert in something, you'll always be able to provide, even if bad things happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way that you put that, because I was blown away when people started making livings playing Madden football. You remember like the game when you're like, you can make a living playing a video game. And that's when it dawned on me that if you're the best at what you do, I don't care what it is that you do. If you're the best in the world at it, someone will pay you to do that thing, like including playing video games, which just blows my mind. So I think you're absolutely right. And again, the bigger fear for me is, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't retiring and then having to come back to work. It was retiring too late and not being able to enjoy my retirement. Because again, talking to another buddy of mine, his parents did the American dream, waited really late to retire, and now don't want to leave the house because they're exhausted, because everything is a chore. Moving is a chore. Their knees hurt, their backs hurt. They want to go see the Grand Canyon, which my wife and I got to go see, and did the West Rim with the skywalk. And there's people who can't go do that right now because physically they're not able. Financially they are, because they worked and did the American dream and they saved, but they didn't invest. Right. So all they were trying to do was build up this nest egg underneath their mattress. And they knew that when they hit this number, that if they only used 4% of it for the rest of their lives, it should last, right? And like, I don't live by that 4% rule at all. My goal was make more money than you make working all with your money. Yeah, exactly. And then that will continue to work forever, and its back never gets sore. It never gets tired. It's going to go work while you're out there racing cars and going to the Grand Canyon and Carlsbad and all that other kind of stuff. So again, just change the way you think about money. And I think it'll change your life. It did for me anyway.
Well, since we're on finances, what's your opinion on the inflation that's kind of spiked over the last few years with everything becoming more and more expensive?
It's incredible the way that everything is intertwined too, right? Now, as inflation goes up, so do some of the rates on like CDs are going up, right? Because I remember when CDs were like less than 1%, they were pathetic, but now they're 5%, right? So when I look at inflation, it has a negative impact on some things and a positive impact on others, right? So now what I'm doing is I'm evaluating, how did the inflation affect all the areas of my life, and where might I move some of my finances? Where might I invest differently than I would have in the past, right? Because a 5% return on money that you know is 100% safe, that's hard to say no to. Right? Yeah, I make a lot more in the stock market, but I'm also at a lot more risk, right? I'm exposed a lot riskier in the stock market, and every day is an emotional roller coaster in the stock market, right? I wake up every morning pre-market and I check it, and I know if it's going to be a bad day or a good day based on what they're doing pre-market, right? That's how crazy I am about the finances, that I'm looking at the prices before the market opens. And I know if it's going to be a good day or a bad day, but my CDs are going to make me that 5%, right? As long as the inflation stays the way that it is, right? And the rates are going up, and so are the cost of money is going up. But depending on what side of the scenario that you're on, this is an opportunity to make money too, right? It's just like options, right? A lot of people buy options in hopes that things happen. I'm a seller of options. There's two sides to every transaction, right? So think about that as well. If something bad is happening in some place, somewhere, something is impacting that you might be able to leverage and take advantage of. And what I'm doing now is parking a lot of money in very, very safe investments that have higher rates now than they've ever had due to inflation. Right. So money is expensive. So allowing someone to use my money now to lend to others generates me a lot of income with zero risk. Like that's the unbelievable thing with the FDIC insuring $250,000 of your deposits in any individual financial institution. Like that money is 100% safe. And what you can do is, as long as you spread it across multiple institutions, it's just not $250,000. I can have $250,000 worth of CDs in Wells Fargo, and another $250,000 of CDs in Capital One, and another one. Like I can get to millions of dollars that is 100% secure, generating 5% interest if I wanted to. And what I do is not 100% of anything. I have some stocks that are growth stocks. I have some stocks that are generating income. I have some CDs. I'm looking at precious metals. Like, again, I'm learning everything that I can about how to generate money with money. And then I'm doing a little bit of everything, because when the stock market crashes, I have all these other assets that are going to still cover my mortgage, right? And still allow me to travel. And then when tech comes back up, something's probably going to go back down. But diversification allows me to weather those storms without all of a sudden it being this crisis and all my money just went down. Because we've all heard the stories where people were heavily concentrated in one particular thing and life looked great. And then all of a sudden something bad happened. And the next thing you know, they're looking around like, what just happened to me? And what I wanted to do is make sure that I diversified my finances such that I can weather those storms. Even now, like now is pretty much a storm. If you look at where our finances were a year ago to where they are right now, a lot of people are panicking. But because I'm not just a growth investor, because if you're a 100% growth investor, you're worried right now.
Right.
But when you're an income investor, even if the stock price ebbs and flows, my income keeps coming. It just makes it a little bit easier for you to weather that. And that's why I do both. Right. Yeah. I want to be able to take advantage when the bull market returns and my growth stocks go crazy. But during the bear markets, I want to be able to have income and be able to pay my bills and live my life without having a lot of stress. And that's why I do a lot of different things versus people saying, "Oh, you should only be 100% growth." I don't subscribe to that mentality at all.
Well, again, for some young people listening, there were some. I'm just assuming there had to have been some really good decisions that you made early in life that kind of set you on the path of kind of progress. Whereas there's other people that make really bad decisions early in life, and it just makes huge roadblocks that they have to try to overcome. To take a decade or two. And so for the young people out there listening, especially the young programmers who are thinking, okay, I got to get this next promotion or I got to get this next project, whether it's technical or just regular life lessons, can you identify any of those big decisions just in, say, your 20s that, man, if it had been different, you'd have been in a different spot, and you're glad that you went down a certain path, and maybe it could be some encouragement for other young people?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I got really lucky is that I found software. I didn't know I could make a living writing software. I just loved it. I mean, I just wanted to figure out how to make that computer do the thing I wanted to make it do, and software allowed me to do that. And I was actually writing software before I was a computer science major. I was actually a biology major, and I was going to go to medical school. And I was doing research at Methodist Hospital under Dr. DeBakey. Like I was like on the path. Like this is like, you're going to be a cardiologist 100%. Like you have everything set up for you. Yeah. And then they asked me to program, like, Donovan, can you help us get our files off the paper and into a computer? I'm like, sure, I love computers. I'm going to start playing with that for you. So I went and got Paradox and a book, and I'm sitting here programming and figuring out how to get the data into the database. And then one night I'm looking around and I realized, holy crap, I'd rather be playing with this computer than the research I'm supposed to be doing. Like something's wrong. Like this is what I should be doing. Yeah. And it was that fearful, it's almost like that courage to turn your back on being a doctor.
Yeah.
Right. Which is obviously every parent's going to be proud. Like that's just like, you're either a doctor or a lawyer. Like that's just stereotypical. That's the way that you go and be successful. And I had to have the courage to say, no, like I'd rather do software, even if that means I'm not going to have the same level of financial safety as a doctor or a lawyer might have.
Yeah.
So I just have the courage to find the thing that you're passionate about and believe more than anyone else in the world that if I'm the best at that thing, I'm going to be successful. So that was the first thing, was like, I had to be courageous and say, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to go study software instead. Went and got a job, and be tenacious too. Went and got a job at Compaq Computers with no degree and no experience, right? But I got in as a technical writer. There was no way they're going to hire me as a programmer with no degree, no experience.
Gotcha.
But they needed a technical writer. And because I used to use computers, even when I was in computers, in chemistry, to go home and type up my notes and add graphs and add charts. And then the next day I would sell my notes to school because I would just print them out and then I would sell them the next day.
Nice.
So I could show that I could write. I could take information and I could distill it down. So when I went to my interview for technical writing, I went and showed them my notes, and they flipped through like, what is it? Like, these are the notes. I sell them every day in school. This is me taking in all the information from my chemistry teacher and then distilling it down to where everyone can understand it. Like, that's exactly what we need for a technical writer. We need you to go talk to these brilliant people at Compaq and distill down what they're telling so that anyone can understand it. Yeah. So I got the job, and I went in there and immediately tried to make me a programmer, right? So but it was, again, being tenacious and not accepting no for an answer.
Yeah.
being courageous and saying, hey, I'm going to go do this despite what everyone else thinks I should be doing, right? Because you're going to have a lot of people that think, oh, well, it's probably not much future there. And they're saying that because they don't understand it, right? If you don't understand something, you're not going to be able to go and encourage people to go do that. So those two things. And then the other thing I would avoid, which slowed me down a lot, was credit card debt, right? As a young person, especially in college, they will give you credit cards like crazy. And again, I didn't understand how money worked. And I would pay just the minimum balance and the interest would start to build up. And so I would get another credit card, and I was in crippling credit card debt at one point in my life. And that really scared me to death. So avoid that at all costs. I still use credit cards, but I only use them to the point where I can pay them off at the end of the month. I never carry balance on my credit card, right? So if you're to the level to where you're only charging what you know that you can pay off at the end of the month, by all means, use your credit card. But if you're paying the minimum balance every month, you have no idea how the damage you're doing to your future. I would be financially far better off than I am now. And I'm able to retire probably 10 years earlier had I not gone through that decade of just horrible, horrible stress. And the stress that it puts on your life was unbearable. I mean, it was like some of the scariest times of my life were around that credit card debt that I had. And so I'll never go back to living a life like that again. So be courageous, be tenacious, find your passion, and give it everything that you have. Avoid credit card debt. those would be my life lessons for like the younger Donovan Brown. If I could go back, and I probably would have retired even earlier than I am now.
Well, I think that's probably a good point for even people who might not know they want to be programmers, because you were following a path, you had a plan in your head, but then programming captured your heart. And you're like, okay, maybe I can't figure out how this makes sense logically right now, but I just know. I mean, it captured you, and you went that way. And I think a lot of people, certainly like my father, he went and got a job with his head, and he was able to provide for the family. But that job didn't capture his heart. I know it didn't. Whereas if we find something where, wait a minute, I do this even when I'm not on the clock. I do this when I'm not even getting paid. Well, just like musicians, people who like to maybe get a living from music or theater or any of the arts, they practice because it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell young people who want to be a programmer. If you're only doing your class projects or if you're only doing your job and that's the only time you program, I mean, you don't love it. Imagine going to the University of Houston as a music student, which massive music program, and never playing your instrument except for a class assignment. That doesn't make sense.
That just sounds sad. Yeah, it just sounds sad. And what I tell people, it's so ironic, right? Because I would happily write software for free, but I'm handsomely rewarded for writing software.
Yeah.
And those who only write software for money, it shows in their work.
Yeah.
Right. Your code will never compare to mine. Because at 8 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you clock out. I'm still going,
right?
Because I'm just loving it. And I'm polishing that code and it works better. And I'm learning the new features of C# so I can make my code more efficient and easier to read and more concise. And yours just looks like you can just see it, right? Your code just doesn't run as well. It's not well tested. It's not a higher quality because you're just a 9-to-5 programmer, right? And what's funny that whenever I used to interview people, the first question I would ask them was, what was the last thing you wrote for fun? If the answer was, oh man, no, once I clock out, I'm done. We could just stop the interview. Like we could have stopped it at that very moment because you're not who I'm looking for. Whenever I say, what is the last thing you wrote from? Oh man, I wrote this program that helped me capture dividends. Like that's the person that I want. The person who's just going to write software because they freaking love it. Because you're going to put in the work. Because there are going to be some hard nights. We're going to be here really late in the morning, and I need you to still want to be here, right? I need you to want to, because no matter how agile we are, no matter how strict we are, we're going to have those deadlines that creep up on us. We're going to have those things that happen where we're going to have to burn the midnight oil. And I want someone next to me in the trenches that wants to be there, that's not begrudging and not mad at me and not saying, man, this is a stupid job. I'm like, it's not. It's the best job in the world. You just don't want to do it. And so I completely agree with you. Find that passion. The way that I usually talk to young people is I tell them, imagine it's Saturday. You have absolutely no responsibilities whatsoever. You wake up when you want to wake up. There's no alarm clock. What do you do that day? You know what I do? I run upstairs, I turn on my computer, and I start to figure out what I'm going to write today. Right? What am I going to go build today? And that's how you find out what that passion is. That's what you find out how you're going to go make that living. My wife loves reading, and now she's a writer, and she does editing. right? Because she loves doing that stuff. She would do it. She does it for free, but she also gets paid handsomely to do it because it shows in her work. So find that thing that you would happily do for free. And that's the thing. If you're the best in the world at it, I bet you're going to make a handsome living, and you're never going to feel like you're working.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wow. Before we kind of run out of time, we're at the end of our time here. You've had a really successful career. You've shipped a lot of software. You helped a lot of other people build and deliver software. Again, our industry has grown so much over the last 14 years. How many times? It's more than doubled or quadrupled in number of programmers. And so like people like you, and I started coding in, I guess, after you in the late 90s, but still we're in this like little sliver of the oldest tenured, programmers in the industry just because of the massive growth.
Yeah.
So, we're mostly speaking to the young people. You mentioned Paradox and all these other technologies that have come along, and now .NET's over 20 years old. But cast into the future. Like, give us some perspective. You got a lot of experience looking back. Cast into the future. If you were starting your career now, what would you like to tell yourself, and what type of technologies or what type of processes around technologies? Little drops of nuggets from a super experienced professional here.
That's interesting because I've written all kinds of software. I've written fat client Windows, like Windows Forms. I've written MFC. You remember MFC?
Yeah, C++.
Foundation. Exactly. So I started there, done a lot of .NET now, WPF, microservices. That's like, where would I focus? I think I'd try to pick a language that gets me to a lot of different platforms. Right? I think that would be my first thing. Like learn something like a JavaScript or a C# that doesn't restrict me to a platform or a type of development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a general language that allows me to write for mobile and for microservices and Windows and Linux and Mac, and like just give me something where I'm not, because before you were picking a language, you were almost picking a platform and a type of development back when you and I were younger, right? Like you kind of pigeonholed yourself as he's the Windows developer. Yeah. Exactly, right. So I would think now we have so many languages that are just cross-cutting and allow you to do all types of development. I think that'll give you an opportunity to find out what type of development do I like. Do I like the back end stuff, which is where I like to live? Because I can't make a UI pretty. I can make it work.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't make it pretty. So I used to always hire graphic artists. So I didn't really like the front end as much. I like the back end stuff, and it's easier to unit test, and it's just fast. And so having a language that allows you to dabble in all different layers of the application in all different platforms will allow you that freedom to go find that area where you want to go focus on as a developer. So like a JavaScript, a .NET, something that's cross-platform and cross-functional, I think would be a great place that I would want to start going forward. Focus a lot on quality early, like understand unit testing early. Don't leave it to something that you learn later. If you learn it early, your code's going to you're going to actually be a faster developer. People don't understand that. Writing a unit test actually makes you a faster developer, not a slower developer. Oh, it takes twice as long. No, it actually doesn't, right? It drastically reduces the amount of time it takes you to get to that point to where you know the program is doing what it's supposed to be doing and will always continue to do what it's supposed to be doing when you start to add things to it, right? So please understand the importance of unit testing and drive that home early in your career. When I went to go learn Go, first thing I learned is how do I test a Go program? Not how do I write Go programs? How do I actually execute Go tests? How do I write Go tests? And then I started writing code that made those tests pass. And that's the way that I actually learned the language. And I feel that when you start unit testing a piece of code, you realize that when you're done, you understand that code a lot better than you think you did. Yeah. Right? It's like, wow, I thought that test was going to pass and it doesn't pass. Why is that? And then you're forced to go and analyze that code. So again, learn a language. I would probably learn a language that's very generic. I would also start learning how to test that code very early in my career, and then just dabble in everything. You might like UI, you might like fat forms, you might like microservices, you might like something else, and everyone's going to find that area that they just thrive in, and then just give it all you got. Like don't half-ass it, man. Just give it everything. Like, and then it'll pay off. I think I'm a shining example of if you give it everything that you have, and there's a lot of sacrifice. I mean, there's been a lot of hard nights, but man, I'm 50, I feel great, and I'm retiring. Like, dude, if you're willing to put in the time, this industry will give you back everything that you give it, plus like multiple times over. So yeah, I am extremely grateful. And I hope everyone who finds software, it just fills your cup, right? And it needs to. Like, don't be that 9-to-5 programmer. It sounds like a miserable life, doesn't it? I mean, Because if you're like, we're weird. Like people who write software are weird. Like we spend 16 hours a day in front of a computer and love it. That's weird, right? I can't imagine how horrible that has to be for someone who doesn't want to be sitting in front of that machine. That glow of the monitor can keep me up for, it feels like days, right? It's like this warm glow of just, oh, you can go make amazing things happen. And so if you love it, man, just give it everything that you have. And I think you're going to have an amazing, amazing career.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that wisdom, and congratulations again on a very successful career and starting the next chapter. You got half your life.
Yes.
So awesome, man. Donovan, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.